Hi everyone, welcome to the webinar on FileMaker 16 and the latest release of FM Starting Point. This webinar was recorded in May of 2017 and covers the latest information on the FileMaker 16 platform, the FileMaker training that's available via video, and also the free CRM that is FM Starting Point, available at fmstartingpoint.com. So without further ado, let's get this rolling. This presentation is largely about bringing you up to date, so I assume that most of you have a little bit of a clue about FileMaker. As a brief overview and a little bit of history here, FileMaker is part of Apple Inc., right? Used to be Apple Computer in the old days, and they are a subsidiary, which means that they're kind of Apple, but they're kind of not. As part of their mandate, they're supposed to make really awesome products, and part of what they do is make great products for the Mac, for iPhone and iPad, but they also have great support, and you're going to see that today, for Windows, and there's also a story about Android support as well. So it's all very exciting. Now, FileMaker likes to talk about the huge numbers of people and the very diverse group of people that use the product. Education, small business, large business really, and departments within giant organizations. So you see FileMaker in use in a tremendous number of businesses. In fact, the product is worldwide. It's really everywhere. It's 15 languages. In fact, even maybe more than that. There's quite a few languages, and over a million active user subscriptions where people are using the product. It's tremendously powerful, and people recognize it, and they use it to solve all sorts of needs every day. Real quick, of course, we're covering this, and that's the whole idea of this new update from FileMaker 16 to continue to promote accessibility for all types of devices, all sorts of mobile devices, iPhones and iPads, Macs and Windows computers, some of them with touch, some of them without touch. It's really a great time to be in the FileMaker business. So today we're talking about the FileMaker 16 release. That's part of this webinar. The webinar will probably go about 90 minutes. We're going to answer as many questions as we can. So the FileMaker 16 platform, we have, of course, FileMaker Go, which is our mobile product, and we actually have a separate video course that's out available as of Tuesday for Go 16. Of course, you have the rest of the FileMaker platform, which runs on the FileMaker engine. This is the central core engine that makes FileMaker special. And the way we set that up is we do the development in either FileMaker Pro or FileMaker Pro Advanced, which we see right here. So FileMaker Server is the central hub. It's the distribution point for our FileMaker Solutions. So we build a solution with Pro or Pro Advanced, and then we actually host it on FileMaker Server, or we take the extra step and host it with FileMaker Cloud. FileMaker Cloud and FileMaker Server are very similar products conceptually. FileMaker Server is the Mac and Windows version that you can run in your office, that you can set up and have your own server. FileMaker Cloud is a version of that, effectively, that's been specifically tuned to run on Amazon's AWS infrastructure, which means that you can go to an Amazon marketplace or this online marketplace and say, host my FileMaker application, and it will post it up at an Amazon data center somewhere that's protected with high levels of security, battery and electrical backups, redundant internet connections. It's very reliable. We're talking the same data centers that run Amazon, the stores, would also be hosting your FileMaker solution. It's really, really powerful technology. Lastly, we have WebDirect, and WebDirect is the technology that gives modern browsers access to a FileMaker custom application. So once again, we talked about Android, and FileMaker, doesn't talk a lot about Android directly because really FileMaker is part of Apple, and Apple likes to promote its own products, but there is this tangential support for the Android devices that are using a modern browser, and you do that with WebDirect. Of course, any device with a modern browser could access it. So we've accessed FileMaker from Chromebooks, and it works great. In fact, the new version of 16 is even faster with WebDirect specifically. So it works great with a Chromebook. Now, our video courses, right here, you can see a little bit of a highlight that kind of emphasize. Our Pro course, 16 course, which we just updated this week, is 50 hours of training. It's mostly about Pro, and then, of course, there's a whole section on server, configuration and management of server, and then an alternate conversation about cloud if you want to go that way as opposed to server. And the setup on server and cloud are very different, but at the end of the day, they both host or share your custom FileMaker application out on the internet with other people, right? Now, of course, FileMaker Server, if you had it in the office, you could have it locked down just in your office and not let it out on the internet. But basically, they're separate products and they're configured differently. Someone did ask, of course, just now, of course, can you get a Linux version of FileMaker Cloud out? FileMaker is not going to release FileMaker Cloud as an installer. It's a complete process, and it's actually explicitly tuned for Amazon AWS. If you actually had a copy of, if you could get a copy of the Linux, it wouldn't work because it's tuned to look for Amazon AWS services and servers. So it's really tuned for that data center, which is cool because Amazon AWS is the biggest provider of data center services and technology, period, anywhere. By far, they have a majority of all the business. In fact, somewhere in the neighborhood of $6 billion in revenue last year, just for this, not for Amazon selling product, but just for their data center services. So Miles, if we get questions along the way, feel free to jump in here. So we're going to cover some 16 specific stuff along the way. Of course, I'm already losing my voice. I was presenting yesterday to the state of California, and they wanted to get this information as well. So the 16 platform, mobility, deployment, integration, security, these are all the major bullet points where we talk about what's in the product. Under the mobility tab, we're talking about FileMaker Go specifically. We're talking about building an application with animations and transitions between the screens and between the windows, which is really useful for trying to explain and show where data is moving and going. The animations right now are only in Go. Of course, I would very much like to petition to see the animations in the rest of the clients. That would be fantastic. We also have the enhanced signature capture, and I can show you that real quick here. Typically, historically, the signature capture was the entire screen of the iOS device. Now you can have it as an overlay, or if you have a large enough iPad, you can have the container field itself be a small signature area. So there are some customizations here onto the signature capture. And once again, we're using the insert from device. So this is an improvement over the existing or the previous release. Now this one here is kind of a funny story. We were shooting, of course, these are all scenes from our videos, and we were using beacons. And so iBeacon is this little Bluetooth transponder. And if you see modern movies, you'll see something like Blade Runner or the new modern type movies where they're showing maybe the future. And as people walk around, it can detect that someone is there and they have an interest in a car, a kind of car, they want certain kind of clothes, and it gives them advertisements, you know, that are custom to that. Well, that's all based upon this iBeacon idea, this technology of iBeacon, which is a Bluetooth transponder. And so FileMaker can, using the iOS, scan for these Bluetooth transponders. In fact, in our demo, we attached a Bluetooth transponder to the bunny rabbit as it ran around the backyard, and we were tracking it. It was actually kind of a cute demo, very interesting. And you'll see all this in our Pro 16 video course. In fact, a bunch of you here are watching this have our courses. There's also support for geofencing, which is this idea that if you go within a certain range of a lat and long, it can set off a script trigger and activate something in FileMaker. So the most common one you hear about people doing geocaches, someone hides something in the ground or under a bridge or by a road, and by following your FileMaker application or another app, it tells you when you get close to it, right? Kind of cool. So that's supported in 16 as well. The development environment has been greatly improved as well. There's a lot of things in here to really like. We're going to demonstrate layout object window, cards. We're going to talk about the PDF support that's now on server, which also then supports WebDirect. And of course, there's this new UI for Windows, which is really huge. In fact, it's one of the biggest parts of the whole product. So it's kind of hard to see here, but this is a screenshot off my Windows 10 machine. These windows are separate. They work like a Macintosh in terms of historically how the Mac has worked. They're separate windows. It's a modern environment. So you're no longer stuck inside this workspace or within this sandbox kind of. I mean, it's the idea that the windows are restricted to this area. So if you're a Windows user and you get 16, you're going to love this. It's really cool. In fact, I'm not a Windows guy, but as a Mac person, I enjoyed using FileMaker 16 on Windows. It was awesome. Integration. This is a more of an advanced conversation topic, but this is a big part of the 16 release. It's not really what we're talking about in this webinar today. This is basically for your senior type developers and more FileMaker Ninja types. Basically, it's an integration of having FileMaker connect to any outside data service. A most obvious one that you could think of would be FileMaker talks to Google Calendar and exchanges calendar data. Now, there are plugins and third-party products in the FileMaker community that already do that. But for example, the other day, one of the senior consultancies in the FileMaker community, and they haven't given me permission to show this or talk about it yet, but they have hooked FileMaker to Watson, IBM Watson. So the whole thing where you see the commercials and it's doing machine learning and it's talking about this sort of information. The demo that they have is you feed in a paragraph of information and they give it to Watson, and Watson evaluates it through machine learning to determine if the words and the sentences you're using in the paragraph are going to be useful in marketing and sales. So it gives you a score on how happy your words are. For example, if you were going to sell a car and you said this as an extreme example, in the event of a giant crash, this car will save your life. Okay, well, that doesn't make people feel necessarily warm and fuzzy. Watson would, of course, score that lower, as opposed to the sunroof gives you a wonderful experience as you drive through the countryside, right? So that's integration with a third-party product. That's part of what this 16 release is about. They're starting to bring this into the product and to FileMaker to really start to invest in this heavily. So this is JSON and Web API and basically REST, REST technology. So I'm not going to spend too much more time in this, but that is extremely cool. And you'll see some people in the FileMaker community really take this upon themselves and talk about it. I'm thinking along the lines of the Calibri folks. I'm thinking along the lines of Todd Geist and his team in Southern California. Really top-notch people who are going to be doing a lot of integration type activities. In fact, Todd at DevCon, if you're not going to DevCon, think about going. He has an entire training day talking about this topic right here. I will be there. I'm going to go and learn something new from Todd. Every time I watch Todd, I learn something new. So it's a pitch for DevCon. If you haven't decided to go to Arizona this year, spend the money. There's an entire training day just on this REST integration. Miles, how are we doing on questions?
We're doing great. Yeah, we got a couple questions. We've just been answering them.
Yeah, so if the questions are off topic, then we'll just answer them out to everyone in the text. And if it's on the topic currently, then they'll throw it at me. All right, so security. FileMaker continues to make a security a top priority issue. They're starting to support OAuth integration, which means that you can have FileMaker get the credentials from an outside service. So for example, historically, people know about typically Microsoft Active Directory. Active Directory has always been this like external authentication that has been part of Microsoft. Well, with OAuth 2 support in FileMaker Server 16, you can get access and credentials passed to Google through OAuth 2, and Google, through the accounting system there at Google, they can give you that back. Amazon, another one where you can go and get some sort of credentials or log in through Amazon, and Amazon then tells FileMaker Server, hey, you're authorized to log into the file. Kind of, once again, the deep end of the pool. And you're seeing this to be continued to be improved and move forward. Also, we get into the database, you'll see some additional little security encryption little icons that pop up and tell you whether your connection to the database is secure or not secure. Also, there's a new function in FileMaker, and I can show you that little sample file where this is demonstrated, but it allows you to apply a very deep level encryption to a field. Say, for example, you have personal identification information, right? This is where you're in a medical database and you have some security information in there that you don't want out. Well, obviously, the whole file would be secure. You'd have encryption at the file level, encryption across the wire. You have all these levels of encryption, but you can also add additional encryption to a specific field and have it be encrypted. For most people, they don't need this, but I could see some applications where this would be useful. Also, it's useful when we're talking, once again, back to the integration here previously. A lot of the new cool things in FileMaker, the encryption and other things they've added, are to support this REST integration. So as we talk to these outside services, we can encrypt data, we can get authorization, that kind of thing. Questions? No questions. All right, moving along. FileMaker Cloud, at this current time, right now, FileMaker Cloud is still basically what we call Cloud 15. It uses the FileMaker 15 engine. FileMaker is basically out of sync in their shipping. I mean, they don't say it this way, but I'm not FileMaker, so I kind of give you the outside consultant's perspective. Basically, in the old days, years gone by, FileMaker would ship an update and they would ship Pro and Server at different schedules. Now they ship everything together, except they're still trying to get the cloud synced up. So the cloud team is a little bit off sync. And so in the coming months, at some point, you're going to see the 16 version of cloud. That being said, the 15 cloud, the cloud we have right now, works great with 15 and 16 client. So there's no reason not to use 16 client, even if you're currently using cloud. Okay, so just understand that there will be an upgrade for the FileMaker Cloud at some point, and FileMaker, of course, will announce that. So scalability, this is a big deal. FileMaker always used to kind of limit the WebDirect to 100 users. And even for me, for that, I always kind of got nervous because it seemed like a lot, right? And I was noticing that WebDirect testing that it was a lot faster. WebDirect was just quick. And so as a result, they could say that FileMaker can support up to 500 users. Now, what it is that FileMaker starts breaking the FileMaker server down, and you get a second server that's an assistant server. They call it a worker machine, but it basically hosts up to 100 users of WebDirect. So you could have 2 or 3 FileMaker worker machines, and each of them would help take a load, right? So if you want 500 users, you need 5 worker machines. Each worker machine can handle up to 100 users, and then basically this product caps at 500. But that's still a lot of scalability. A vast majority of people here in this webinar, I'm pretty sure most of us, the average size of the average work group is 15, 20 people, right? Some of you are just single people. Some of you, my team is like 30. You'll have a handful that'll be hundreds and hundreds. So, and those are big user groups at big companies. So let's talk about system requirements so we can preempt the questions about the 8 million questions that are going to show up. So for Pro and Pro Advanced, Mac and Windows, basically, this is always a little bit of point of friction because people would like to see a little bit farther back support, but it's hard to QA this product, especially with older versions of the operating system that are not being updated. So 10.11, 10.12 are required to run 16 on Macs. On Windows, basically everything from 7 Professional SP1. So if you have all the updates on it, Windows 7, you're going to be in pretty good shape. FileMaker is kind of, I thought I saw it in a deprecation document somewhere, but they were talking about at some point in the future that they were going to chop support for Windows 7. If you're a Windows 7 shop, a lot of people are happy with Windows 10. I would just generally encourage you to start thinking about your migration and moving up to Windows 10. It's a good release. FileMaker Go, iOS devices running iOS 10. So there are a bunch of iPad 2s that are out there, and those iPad 2s essentially are going to be end of life. So they can use FileMaker Go 15, but they cannot use FileMaker Go 16. So I think the rule of thumb is any iOS device with a lightning connector, right? Anyone bobbing your head up and down? I think that's what that is, right? So that's almost a dead giveaway. So if you have the old 30-pin connector, you can't run iOS 10, therefore you can't get Go 16. Server, once again, on the Mac side, it's the same as Pro and Go. It's 10.11, 10.12. And then this is quite the range in here. This is Windows 2008, 2012, and 2016. And then, of course, you see down at the bottom, it's being deprecated for 2008. So this will probably be the last release where you're going to run FileMaker Server on a Windows 2008 machine. System operating for WebDirect, real quick. It used to be that they supported 3 browsers, and then Microsoft kind of split their browser business, and they've got this legacy Internet Explorer. So we're still supporting that. So we have Safari 10, Chrome 55, Internet Explorer 11 or better, and then Edge 38. And I'm not sure, I don't have the latest from FileMaker on this, but there were some concerns a couple weeks ago about Edge 40. Microsoft really did some interesting things with Edge 40, and it's broken a lot of third-party websites and a lot of technology. And so I would check on any known issues with Edge 40 before diving into it. If you've already upgraded, then you could try it, see how it works. Of course, if you're not using WebDirect, then it doesn't really matter too much. So, and then of course, if you're mobile browsers, you need to be Chrome 55 or better on Android 6.x. Miles, questions?
Nothing directly to operating system requirements. Well, we actually had just someone message in asking about Firefox.
Yeah, Firefox, it's not supported officially. In previous releases, it seemed to work okay. You could try it. Your mileage may vary. It seems like the open source browser, which used to be Firefox, has now become Chrome because Google invests so much money into it. So, I mean, once again, it's not officially supported. If it doesn't work, then yeah, I don't know how much FileMaker tech support is going to be able to help you with that. Any other questions there? Yeah, the questions about performance differences between 16 and 15 WebDirect. We haven't stopwatched it out, but FileMaker is basically doubled, tripled, quadrupled the number of simultaneous users they support. So I'm willing to bet, without, once again, your mileage may vary on this. It seemed to me noticeably snappier. If I actually got a stopwatch out and ran it, it seemed to be radically faster. I know FileMaker's run some tests. The problem is when they run a test with their software, it doesn't necessarily reflect what you're going to see. We haven't run, well, largely I don't have one server and 5 worker machines set up anywhere, and I don't have any way to easily have 500 clients log in. If those of you remember the webinar we had when Cloud came out, I had 100 of you online here, and we have way over 100 today, log on to the Cloud, and we had 100 people, 105 or 8 people logged onto it. And it took some effort for everyone to get on there, but it worked great. So I don't have any way of really testing that and putting numbers to it, but it seems it's noticeably snappier. So it's good. Moving along, so we have some demos here. We're going to work with FileMaker to make sure we can make these demos available to the public. But the short version is FileMaker has some nice demos here that talk about various technologies. The animations and transitions largely revolving around Go. So just imagine swipes on, swipes off. They have a demo for the region monitoring, which is the iBeacon bunny rabbit tracking that you saw earlier, enhanced signature capture. This is the new version of Starting Point. This is Starting Point 5, and as of this morning, 5.02. If you have 5.01, I recommend you download the new bug fix version. We found a couple bugs that we cleaned up, but this is 5.02. If you go into, say, for example, contacts, or say we go into invoices, right? And I wanted to attach someone to an invoice. Say I detached a contact. I wanted to attach someone. We can pop a card. This is a card. It's basically a layout window, right? But it's superimposed and it's within this window. And it's modal to the parent window. So this child window is modal. So you can't click over here and access anything. You can actually do some work here, select something, and then take action based upon that. So instead of popping a new window and having it spawn, and then it's floating right over here and it's loose, and then the user can click behind it and get lost, the card style window is a new style that allows you to specifically highlight and gray out the area. It's really nice. It's a nice touch. It's a modern feel. It's a modern thing we see in browsers. So for FileMaker to support this was great. I really like it. Once again, depending upon your needs here, depending upon the needs, you can actually, this card style can be different sizes. We have the card style here running as tall as possible because in a lot of situations, we're gonna have a long list. So this is a sample. This is the exact copy of Starting Point that you would download today. It has one record in it. Just for giggles, what I can do is I can log on to a FileMaker 16 server, and if I can find out where, there it is, that's Starpoint server. It's going to log on to this one. This one has hundreds and hundreds of thousands of records in it, and you're going to see it operate across the internet at speed, right? So, once again, and we made some performance improvements to Starting Point, largely to make the performance of these calculations run radically faster. So we have 50,000 invoices in here. You can see the performance of FileMaker across the internet on a kind of a standard broadband connection, and I don't know, 300-400 miles away from the server. It's pretty good. It works pretty well. And you're going to get the same performance, surprisingly, from WebDirect. WebDirect's performance is pretty close. Sometimes it doesn't do everything quite as fast as Pro or Go, but it seems pretty good for the most part. Questions, Miles? How are we doing?
Good. We got a couple here. Servers, WebDirect, or General? Which one you want?
Just give them. Let's just hit them all.
All right. WebDirect. Will signatures be supported in WebDirect?
Yeah. So here's the deal with WebDirect, and we kind of cover this in our training at length. And the training, the training courses are at learningfilemaker.com. The WebDirect is designed for a modern browser. It's important to understand that. It's designed for a modern browser. It's not really designed necessarily for Android. FileMaker goes and certifies it'll work on certain versions of Android and Chrome and et cetera, but FileMaker Go is designed explicitly for an iOS mobile device. So they're really tuned, two different clients, two different targets. So if you're looking for signature capture, barcode capture, tight integration with still images or videos, iBeacon support, geofencing, all that kind of peripheral kind of rich goodness that you get out of an iPhone or iPad. You're not going to get that with Android because the WebDirect is not designed explicitly for Android or any browser. So when I use it in the Chromebook, it works great. I have great access to a database like this, but if I want to capture a signature, and then scan a barcode, it's not going to do that very well. Now, what WebDirect does support, it's much faster than it was. The other thing it supports is printing now. So we've gone ahead and we've worked hard to make sure that Starting Point can print. And what it does is the FileMaker server actually has the print engine built into it now. It's a big deal. It's actually the two things with WebDirect is the scalability, and the other issue is printing. So it can create PDFs. It also can print. The way it prints is by generating the PDF and sending it to the browser. That makes sense. So the FileMaker server renders a beautiful PDF, it pops it into a window, then you can directly print that without worrying about the browser butchering the layout, right? So that's always been the issue with that one. Great technology. I mean, it's in here. So if you go into script workspace, we come over here and we show the right side. So we come over here and we say, like, just show us the things that are compatible with server, right? Then you come down here and we take a look at some of the other commands that are now supported that were not supported with 15, right? So we have print setup, and then we also, so printing itself is not in here, but then the ability to generate a PDF is in here. It's pretty cool. In fact, let me go find the PDF. Yeah, there it is. So PDF records is now in here. So the way the server prints is basically it renders out to a PDF, and then you can actually mail the PDF to someone or print it, right? Very cool. So the print command itself is not supported on server, but it generates a PDF, and then from there, typically you're gonna upload it or send it somewhere. And so this is now supported as part of server, which is really cool. So that's a good question there. In fact, what we're doing is we're working on a demo here. FileMaker's got a demo where they talk about this a little bit, but the rub is that it's kind of a little bit of a trick pony. I mean, for those of you who print now with WebDirect, you basically have to do a queue a job, and then some sort of copy of FileMaker Pro on the server, or some sort of robot machine has to grab it and then print it for you. You don't have to do that anymore. You just have to write a script. But in order to print the PDF, there's a little bit of, to script it, there's a little bit of subtlety to the way it works with WebDirect. And so we're working on a little training tool right here. I'm going to show this. In fact, the engineer who's working on this is going to freak. We had a lot of products that shipped this week. This is one of the products that we're going to ship in the next week or two with some videos. And it talks about the subtleties of PDF generation and specifically how that works with WebDirect. So we compare how doing this works with Pro and how it's scripting it works with Pro. Then we talk about how it works with Go, and then we talk about kind of the little issues that go on to doing it with WebDirect. And so we're going to do a video about this. We have some little script code here that talks about this, how it works, how it should work better, that kind of thing, but how to make it work. Because what you do is when you generate the PDF, you're going to get this dialog on your WebDirect screen. You're going to get this dialog that says, okay, download this now, and it pops it into a window, right? And if you save it on WebDirect and it actually saves like to the drive, it's only can save to the download folder of the browser, right? Remember, we're in a browser, we're not in FileMaker Pro. We're in Chrome or Edge or whatever we're in. And so it only can save to the authorized download file. So it either pops it into window, or you say, okay, here, and it saves it to the downloads. So it's limited. I mean, you can't just save to the desktop, you can't save to the documents directory. You know, we're within a browser, there's certain limitations. And those are largely security limitations. In the old days, the browsers didn't have that security limitation. People writing all sorts of malicious stuff into a browser. And so you'll see that coming out fairly soon. It's kind of a walkthrough of really how to make WebDirect work really well with the printing and PDF generation. So we have more questions. Miles, you want to hit me with something else?
Yeah, that PDF thing's a real big point. FileMaker had a Facebook Live video the other day with two of their PMs, and that was one of the big things they kept mentioning is that that new capability. Let's see, we have, one of our guys already answered this, but some people might also be asking it. Can a FileMaker 16 file be hosted on a FileMaker 15 server with the new functionality?
Yeah, I kind of blew by this. So let me go back. In fact, some of you have seen my top 10 video recording, and we haven't even talked really about the number one issue. So on the issue of file format, let's start with file format. So first off, FileMaker 16 is the FMP12 file format, which means it's the same file format that came out with 12. Now, it doesn't mean that really a 12 file can use a 16 file. It just means that technically you could go there and probably open it, but you would have areas where certain functionality wouldn't work and it would start to red exit out. So understand that there's really no conversion or migration to use 16. You can just use it. That being said, my general rule of thumb when I tell my customers, I say don't mix more than 2 releases, right? So if you're going to be mixing 15 and 16, generally that's okay. If you get to a spot where you're using a very 16 specific feature, for example, starting point, cards, we pop the cards right here. We say, show me the purchase history for this person. Pops the card, here's more of a centralized card. If you do this, if you run this script in 16, we get a card. In 15, you get a window, another window, a giant window. So it still works, but it doesn't necessarily look as good. In some areas, it may not work at all. Like, for example, if we called the encryption routine, something like that, it would just fail because that code does not exist in older versions of FileMaker. That being said, if you're using 15 and you want to kind of ease into 16, get some of your clients, pro users using it, maybe some Go users, try it out, make sure it's working. If you're just you and yourself, then you can just fire it up with 16, or you can, open it up with 15. So if I go over, I'm gonna open my hard drive right here, and I'm gonna go into, so here's my installs. So I have 14, 15, and 16 on this machine right here. Make sense? So I could technically quit this and try to open it in 14, but I'm saying your mileage is gonna vary, and the farther you go back in time, fewer features are gonna work. Now, mixing and matching server. So the rule of thumb is once again, you try to stay within 1 release of the person next to you in your office. So if you have a 15 server, then you're going to be able to run basically 14 clients, 15 clients, and 16 clients, right? Now that's explicitly been set up in Go this way. Go will only dip its current release and dip 1 above and 1 below. So you have Go 16, theoretically it could talk to whatever next time is, maybe, who knows, no promises. But that's kind of the idea. They don't want to certify it, like Go 16 works with server 12. That's just, they don't want to go there and have to QA that. It's kind of a mess. Remember, think about all these versions, all these releases, and all these OSs. FileMaker spends a tremendous amount of its engineering budget just QAing and making sure the products work with this version of Windows, and it's every script step. Everything has to work with every release. It's a tremendous undertaking. So for them to just say, well, we're going to support Firefox and we're going to support Mac OS back to 10.9 or something, I mean, that could take another $2 or $3 million of budget per year just to do QA those things. So, so at some point they have to have a limit to how far they'll go back in QA. So 15 server, you can access with these clients. If you had a 16 server, you can use up through the latest V release of Pro 14. Does that make sense? So, Miles, did I cover that? I kind of beat that horse to death a bit, sorry.
No, it's good. I think you covered it both ways, and a lot of people are giving feedback saying, yes, thanks for answering that.
Okay, great.
All right, next one. Can OAuth 2 accounts be created via scripting?
You can create an account in FileMaker. Oh, boy, that's a good question. You can create an account. You can delete an account. You cannot mess with privileges in FileMaker. So that's like one of those little areas that FileMaker would love to test you on is, when you do security, understand the differences between what you can do with scripts and what you can't do. Remember that in order for OAuth to work, you're going to have it. It talks to groups. So there's a whole sub area into this whole OAuth. So there's basically FileMaker gets its privilege set from the group more or less that gets passed back. That's how Active Directory has always worked. The new Active Directory, so in OAuth 2, it supports Azure's Active Directory and it supports groups there, right? Pretty cool. There are no groups in Amazon or Amazon AWS that hook to this, and there are no groups in Google. So the utility of hooking to those 2 services are somewhat limited. We've talked about that kind of internally among some of the senior developers, like, how useful is that? It could be useful maybe for small teams, but for large teams with lots of users, then you might want to look at Azure's Active Directory for that. How far you can script that, I haven't tried that. I know you can create accounts. Well, you just look at the scripts, workspace, and see how far that goes down. We just get rid of the PDF. But you have the whole issue on security down here of how far you can enable an account, disable an account. Yeah, so you can add an account, change the account. I mean, if you go to an add account, just how far can you go with that? Privilege set. Yeah, and I think you can attach a privilege set to the authentication method, right? So I think you could add that in here. So I haven't done it. I'm not going to promise it's not going to work perfectly, but I believe that's how you do it. So you can script it this far. The commands in here have not changed from 14 to 15 to 16. These are the same commands we've had for the last number of years. So areas that you'll see FileMaker improve on, the script workspace, for example, and we talked about little areas. Some areas they don't touch. The printing, they've reworked pretty hard. Over here, if you do a search, we say PDF, you can see it highlighting in yellow and showing you these things. You can open up a script over here and be looking at this. This is a starting point. It's a little bit wide. I can bring this back. Another thing you can do is, I think it's a command or control. You can click on a script. So it says perform script, and I want to see that script. You press it, you click it, it pops that script into a new tab up here. So you don't have to hunt for it. So little subtle things. In fact, that one I hadn't even learned until a couple days ago. It slipped by me. It's little issues that make life so much better. So let's talk about things that make life better that we haven't talked about. The card is a big one. This one tool went right here. When people see this, it blows their mind. So this is the window right here. It reminds you a little bit of an inspector window. So if I pop this is the inspector, and we've had the inspector for a while, and it's got 4 panels at the top. This is another, I don't want to say kind of inspector, but it's that kind of window. And so here it is right here. It's called the layout object window. Basically, it's a hierarchical tree of everything on this page. This is something that we have wanted a long time. It's here, it's awesome. So example, I want to work on starting point here or on some sort of solution. I want to click on the unit price and change the currency. So I click on this, and is that one gonna actually work for me? That's not a good example. Where's the good example at? I need a good example. Hang on, no one panic. I'm panicking, panic. I know I did a demo over here for this. This is a good one. So layout mode, once again, you click on a portal row, and what you get is you get the top object, which in this case is a button. So I was looking for a button that's on top. The button is invisible. So what do we normally do in FileMaker? You go, well, I could move it out of the way, but then it was in a really precision spot. And so, you know, then I want to change this, then I have to get this thing back here, and then but of course it's invisible, so now I can't, oh, I grabbed it, I move it back, and is it aligned right? And if it's not, it becomes a mess, a real hassle. And so what I do is I'm going to undo, put this all the way back to the way it was. Notice multiple levels of undo. I keep hitting undo. And then I say, I click on the button, and I come over here and I say, I can just hit the I right here and say hide. And so now it's hidden. Now I could have also right-clicked it and done some other things, but hiding it, I've hidden it. Now I can click on these items and change them. So let's change this one to currency of something else. Of course, my inspector is off hiding somewhere. It's behind, oh, it's behind, there it goes. So here it is, we can do currency, I can change it to something else, right? There's the currency and we've changed it. And so then we wanna look at it and see how it looks. So I go browse mode, Command B, or you could go up here and say browse mode. I'm jumping back and forth, keyboard shortcuts, my left hand, Command L, Command B. And I say, I look at it and it's like estimates, and then, oh, there it is, it's good. Okay, let's do that other places. So I go back to layout mode and I click here, and it's still hidden, that object. So when I went to browse mode, it didn't reset this hiding that we're doing. It preserved it. And so it's specific to my session as a developer. Other developers who are in this won't see my changes like this. It's specific to me. And when I finally quit FileMaker, it will reset it for me automatically. But if I want to reset everything, I just press the button at the top, right? And I replace it. And then when I click here again, I'm back to that. So you can go through here, you can do searches. We were in updating starting point, we had a hidden portal with SQL in it. We couldn't find it. It was a 1x1 size item buried on the screen. We couldn't find it. We did a search, you know, for something, and it brought up the punch list, and I was able to click on it, you know, and click my way through this. And this is really cool. This is a big, big deal. And so you get like a tab here, and or you know, I get rid of this. I come over here. Make this bigger. Okay. One of my tech support guys is telling me that you guys can't see everything on the screen. Sorry about that. So as we look here, you can go up here and say, I only want to see this item right here. Right click it, hide all other objects, right? So once again, that's really dramatic. And then back to browse mode, B, and then you work around, you do some stuff, you come back, you go to layout mode, and it's the same way. It's super cool. This has saved so much time. Just me working on stuff. And of course, you can reorder stuff, you can name it, you can come down here. If you actually give it a name, you know how FileMaker by default doesn't name objects. So if you give it a name like, you know, I'll just call this box Fred, because I have a really amazing way of naming things. So that's Fred. Now notice we changed the name, but you know, we could do a search for Fred. So if you knew you were looking for Fred, then you could find it. It's really cool. So once again, this is the same as if you clicked on the object and you were in the inspector, which is hiding again, and you go over here to the position panel, then you could see the name right there. So there's Fred. So that's basically a second way of doing the same thing. Super cool. This is a major time saver for developers. The card style window is a nice to have. This one is like crack. I mean, I can't have enough. This is, you know, this is awesome. I need this. We need more of this. So the script workspace behaves better. The relational diagram is basically essentially the same one. So, you know, what hasn't changed? Well, I mean, we're talking about the things that have changed and a lot of little subtle things, but largely the relational diagram operates and looks the same way it always has. This is starting point once again. That's why it's kind of fairly neat and organized. Pricing of the product. You go to buy the product. The pricing has not changed as a general rule. Now, the caveat to that is there has been some currency adjustments for people outside North America. So your price may have gone up or gone down based upon the change of the currency value, et cetera. So there may be a price change there, but that would only be because of currency fluctuations. The product itself is still the same price. If you have a FLT license, like an annual FLT or an annual VLA license, you know, it's going to be the same every year for you. The price hasn't changed. If you're under maintenance or you're under an annual agreement, you should be getting an update from FileMaker and an email from them automatically. Once again, if you have a complex solution and a big team of people, please slowly try it out. Check with your plugin manufacturers. I know that 360works has just updated their plugins for this, and they're getting it QA'd, so they're right on top of this. I imagine the evil twins at Productive Computing, I like them very much. They are awesome developers down there at Productive. They also make a lot of interesting plugins. I am sure they're supporting this. You need to check with your plugin manufacturer to make sure you can get the plugin updated and make sure it works great with 16. Make sure, of course, on Windows that the plugin is either 32-bit or 64-bit. For FileMaker on Windows, you can get Pro or Pro Advanced in 32-bit or 64-bit. Mac is just Mac. It's all 64-bit for Mac. So the plugins also come that way as well. They can be cooked for 32 or 64-bit on the Windows side. Questions from the team?
Yeah, we've had a couple people asking about changes with the data viewer and also with variables, which I know were both in our top 10 video.
Yeah, the variables are useful in a lot of areas. Okay, so let's do the data viewer first because that's simpler for me. I don't spend tons of time in the data viewer. I use it maybe once or twice a day. Some of my developers live in it, like once again, like crack. Largely, it works the same, but it's got this cool auto-evaluate function in here. So what happens is, if I say get, well, I could get window, let's say like window size or something, window content height, for example. It updates down here. Now, if you start to have things that change up here, you can have it automatically evaluate. So like normally you'd have to say press evaluate, right? And then so say I'm messing with the formula up here, right? And then you know, as I notice it's updating in real time, so that makes it handy. That's just a nice to have. Of course, it could be obnoxious. A couple times I've turned it off because it was losing its mind on a really hard calculation, and I wanted just to wait until I did something important, you know, and I add a string of text, right? And then I say, oh, reevaluate, thank you. So you can turn on the automatically or turn it off, but the automatic is really cool. That's nice to have. That's a great thing as well. Variables are big in the product, much more so. They continue to be critical. Let me show you specifically. Well, the short version is that FileMaker has made variables an available target on a lot of their scripts. So if I'm just going to close, I'm going to hit Command W and close out so we get a blank screen. I'm going to start a new script, so it's kind of empty. And then what you'll do is you'll notice that if you go down to insert, not from device, but insert, insert from URL, right? There's another one right here. So if I bring this over here, notice that we can target, we can provide a target, and you can also provide the variable right here. So if you insert normally data from a URL, it's a classic where we're interacting with other systems. You can insert it now into a variable. This is really big. It makes things much cleaner, much simpler. We're using this a lot. The area where I have personally used this a lot in the last several months, is in external data references. So what happens is if I open starting points is actually a tremendously useful example of this. And then where is the side nuggets, Miles? Where's the side nuggets for the photo? Is that on projects, or where is that at? That's somewhere, right? You can chime in and find that for me on your copy. So, because we're going to get into the conversation. So we go File, Manage, External Data Sources. So external data sources, they catch all for everything that's not this one specific file. It could be another FileMaker file. It could be an Oracle data source. It can be lots of stuff. And you can target things explicitly. This is a great example here. So look at this. I can't really zoom on this I could try to zoom. Oh, hey, look at that, it's gonna work. Can they see that? So this is the old way of doing a data reference. This data reference right here is for a file next to this old file, and this is used in one of our training videos where we talk about importing from the old version of FileMaker. These are hard-coded data sources. So for example, there's a news section in here where I wanna say, I want the news. And so you come over to video training. Oh, I'm in this window right here. I'm gonna hit cancel. I'm gonna go video training, and I'm gonna hit get me the latest news. And so it downloads the latest news from RCC, and that course should be 502 because we just updated that about an hour or two ago. And so if we go back to manage data sources, you see it's hard coded. So if my server changed or the domain changed or something changed, I am host. You can set these now to path, so you can have a script that sets the path. And with a script, you can get data from anywhere, right? And what's really neat about this is that we took the time to integrate the photo app from Nick Hunter. Nick Hunter is an Apple-trained user design interface expert from Apple, right? Worked with FileMaker, worked at Apple. He's basically a design ninja. This design that you see in Starting Point is effectively his design. And he has worked very closely with us to update our design, and he's part of the RCC team. We're thrilled to have him on board. And he actually has his own little product that he's been working on for a while. It was hard to connect it to FileMaker because you had to make a reference as a data source. So what we did is now it is a reference. So it's and I'm not trying to sell this, but it's relevant to the conversation, how you might do things for yourself. You go to preferences, you see all the preferences in here, you go to photos. This is Nick's product right here. And so you can buy it for $199, whatever, and it gives you this whole huge iPhoto kind of experience in FileMaker. It's a great photo management tool in FileMaker. It's a separate file, so if you have FileMaker Starting Point here, the photo file sits right here next to it. And then the URL can be dynamically activated. So as I go through layouts in the product and in contacts, I'm not getting errors saying it can't find this file, error, it can't find this file. FileMaker is smart enough that if the variable isn't set, it doesn't badger me that it can't find the other file. It's really cool. So if I go to layout mode over here, and I'm going to lose that screen and bring the inspector over, right here is some optional. This is in here, it's optional. It won't work, and it'll say blank if there's no version of photos around. So it's off the screen, no one knows about it. If they don't like it, they can delete it, but it's here. So if you put the file over here next to it, the photo file, and you put the value in the variable, then this external data source becomes active, turns on, and then suddenly, relationally, it connects to your solution, and your solution is kind of modular a little bit, right? We're heading towards this idea. FileMaker's talked about kind of their future, and they've kind of obliquely said that they're looking towards more modularity and supporting this kind of stuff. FileMaker is actually working hard, and they've had presentations about this from the product management team that talk about the future and what they want to do. Sometimes they're very specific, sometimes they're kind of vague, which means that they're working on it, but it's farther out. The modularity is kind of a vague, farther out thing that they've seen, right? They talk about it, but we haven't seen it. We don't know what it's going to be, but a lot of people have said we need modular products that work like this, and they don't throw errors if the piece isn't there, right? So this is really cool. Very cool add-on. It's a variable. I think over here, I've been asking for this ever since I got involved with FileMaker Pro 2.0 in 1990. I thought that we really needed a way of dynamically setting this path. And so it's been on my request list since 1990. I am stoked. It's here. I'm not picking on FileMaker. It finally got to be important enough that they added it. But Back in those days, there weren't even variables. So, I mean, I don't know how we would have done it, but variables are in here. You know, we've been looking at this a little bit for a little while, and obviously been working on training videos and providing feedback to FileMaker. This update, initially, when I first saw it, I was like, this is a little bit light, you know, light on features. And then you start to play with it. And then you realize that there's some really major deals in here. And I haven't even touched the integration with the external communication. This is just staying inside the application. The external API capability is tremendous. We haven't even touched that. And they're laying the tracks with 16 with that. You know, it's kind of a 1.0 implementation or attempt, and I think it gets better. For those of you who are wondering about this and you wonder how that compares to Base Elements free plugin, very similar, except that it's not an external plugin by Base Elements. Now, Nick Orr at Base Elements, fantastic guy. I think highly of him and his products. In fact, the Base Elements products itself, great. But FileMaker doesn't necessarily want to be having mission critical technology relying upon a third-party vendor on a different continent, right? As much as they love Nick Orr, some of the things they need to have in the base product themselves. So that's kind of what this is. So Nick is, of course, thrilled with this. He's happy that FileMaker would support this natively, and eventually it'll get really good. And so you could start playing with it now and going down that road, but that's part of this release. It's the card style windows. It's the popover, not popover, but the layout object window. It's the support for WebDirect and printing, the speed performance improvements, the worker machines, and then getting all the support on Amazon, AWS, and the cloud. I cannot speak highly enough about the cloud. The cloud is a big deal. We have people who have FileMaker servers totally out of their office. They didn't have to buy the hardware. They didn't have to worry about installing solid state drives and scheduling the backups. The cloud itself, which came out last September, is awesome, and we recommend it. In fact, I would probably think to see 80–90% of all our customers probably using the cloud. Eventually, you know, you'll be 10–20% people using regular FileMaker server, which is crazy. But that's, in my estimation, I think that's where this is heading. Miles?
Yeah, great transition. We actually had a cloud question. They said you mentioned that FileMaker Cloud doesn't have a version 16 server as yet, but the current 15 will support version 16 clients. So the question,
it works just fine.
Their question was whether the new version 16 features such as cards and JSON, will those work using version 16 clients with the current cloud?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and I nailed FileMaker on this. I remember I was down in their office, and I pinned the PM team down. I said, listen, if you guys delay this issue is going to come up, right? And they said that's the cloud team is kind of on a different schedule. And I said, okay. And so here we are having the conversation. And basically what it is that everything works except part of the FileMaker server that does the REST API stuff on the server end of it, where it's a data source for REST, right? Because part of this is FileMaker server and eventually cloud become a REST API service. It's a server out there. So the part that you would wire in with Pro, where you're going to interact with other data centers or data systems with Pro and Go, they're going to work just fine. The parts that are 16 specific, the part that people are going to notice the most is the printing. Right? The printing is part of server 16. If we don't have server 16 on the cloud, you don't have the printing. So if you're using WebDirect, you want the printing, you're going to have to wait a little bit. It's not a tremendously long time. In fact, I've heard different dates and schedules, and I'm not even sure FileMaker exactly knows when they're going to ship it, but it's soon. It's, you know, obviously sometime this year yet. So, I mean, I can't, you know, no idea. But the point is they get going with 16. If you're using 15 cloud and you want to take advantage of the printing, then you don't want to be waiting for that announcement from FileMaker. But they're testing and making sure it works good. Obviously, they don't want to launch it prematurely. I mean, that would be the worst thing, to launch cloud and have it stink. So obviously, they're going to QA it. They're testing it. They're making sure it works well. And it works well with the 16 and 15 clients. So the printing is a big one. And then the REST, making FileMaker server a REST source of REST with that kind of technology. And then obviously getting the Active Directory authentication parts, where we said that OAuth 2 is supported for the server to go out and authenticate that. Yeah, so a lot of those little things like that that are server specific will be delayed until they get the 16 cloud out. But once again, it's going to be, if you're using cloud and you have a subscription, you're paying Amazon, it's a free upgrade, right? So one of those kind of deals. So yeah, it's kind of a little bit of a delay. It's kind of a bummer, but it's coming, and the cloud updates. For those of you not paying attention, let's have a little update, a little schedule moment here. So educational. So cloud comes out in September. They issued an update in November, December timeframe, right? And then they did another update in March. And in March, they started supporting European data centers. So Amazon has data centers all around the world. FileMaker is slowly starting to support all the data centers. So it's North America now, or US right now, and it's European was added in March. So FileMaker seems to be, I'm just saying historically here, once again, I can't get shot for talking history here, is that they seem to be on a launch cycle with cloud about every 4 to 5 months. So every 4 to 5 months, they seem to issue an update. They're issuing many more updates for cloud than we are for the rest of the product line. FileMaker, seems to me that they're trying to go to a faster software release schedule. And so obviously they seem to be on an annual schedule with the main platform itself, which seems to be May. It was May for the last 2 years, and this is the 3rd year, right? So it seems to be on schedule, and of course we're getting more updates with cloud. So that's all I would say. Just look at your calendar and look at the history, and then you can kind of guess when things will arrive. Questions? Okay, so my team is asking that I mentioned coaching. So obviously RCC does development. I'm not here to say on development services. I would love everyone to buy the training. Thank you very much for supporting Starting Point. This product right here is completely free, the CRM right here. It's available at fmstartingpoint.com. If you would like training in Pro or see the training that we talked about, you can get it very inexpensively, or you can get a bundle that you renew annually. So that's a good deal. But some people need a little more hand holding, so we have one-on-one coaching. It's highly, highly discounted. And so we have some mid-level FileMaker developers, and they will spend time one-on-one with you on a schedule, whatever you want to set it up, and they do a screen share and they coach you. And so it's not like a one-off thing where I have one person doing it. I think we have 5 coaches at RCC. We have 30 engineers. 5 of them, I think, are either full-time or nearly full-time coaches. So if you're interested in coaching at a highly discounted hourly rate, email the team at support@rcconsulting.com. People are asking questions about when should I use FM Starting Point 5? Like, I already have FM Starting Point 3 and I'm using it for something. How do I get into 5? Okay, so here is the model, and this is kind of, once again, FileMaker was talking about adopting and supporting the modularity here. So the new features of Starting Point? Okay, real quick, understand that what Starting Point is a starting point for your project, your next project. It's not designed for if you've already taken like a previous version and you want it to magically update with the new features. FileMaker, that's not really a strong suit yet. FileMaker talks, and we've talked to FileMaker, that modularity would be great, and so someday to be able to like patch the solution conceptually would be great. It's frankly one of the last big remaining weaknesses of the platform, as far as I'm concerned, is the ability to, like, say, take these 5 features and roll them up in a patcher updater, and it updates the file that you see there. So basically, my advice to you is the same thing I do. I have a system that sells and manages the video training when people buy it and update it, and they have an annual release, and the newsletters that you get. That's based on Starting Point 3, right? And we've updated and customized it, and it works perfect for my company. We're not going to want it. We don't want to rebuild it with a new version just because we have a new version. Now, I know some people out there are a little OCD, and I have some OCD people in here, and I've been known to be that kind of person. You have to have everything, the latest. It's not really designed to do that. So I would start new projects with it. If you have a project you've just started in the last week, maybe use the new 502. So let's talk about what's in Starting Point 5. Specifically, we went out and we really supported cards. We also had Nick Hunter working with us to make sure the user interface is great. So in the event that you need some help with some awesome UI design work, send us an email to support RC Consulting. We can connect you with the design guy that really did a fantastic job with this interface, because he's available. In fact, I don't know if he's even watching the show here. I would send him in and say hi. But anyway, so this is Starting Point. Largely, it looks the same. The modules are the same. What we've done is, under the hood, done a number of bug fixes we were surprised that we never saw. Another one was performance improvements. There were some, the way we, and for those of you, it's a little bit, so this is a little bit less basic and more intermediate developer. We didn't really see a problem with Starting Point with 100 or 1,000 records, or 50 or 20,000 records most of the time. But if you put 50,000 records in an older version of Starting Point, And certainly in all the FileMaker Star solutions, you'll see some really gnarly performance issues that'll pop up. So this screen is pretty quick. You can add new items, you can change values here. I could change this to 500 and notice that it updates quickly. That's not a problem. Now, once again, this is the one that's on a server hundreds and hundreds of miles away. It's not locally here. So this is about as slow as it's gonna get. If we went to a list view and I wanted to scroll, it's hard to see with the scrolling because the screen refresh here, but the scrolling here is super fluid. Just take my word for it, you're on a screen share and it's kind of probably chunky, but it's butter smooth because the data is coming down fast because all these values are cached. A lot of time in our video training course we spend talking about performance tuning FileMaker. In fact, I got a call from a company today. They have a solution, someone's building with them, the performance is horrible because as they build it, they're not paying attention to performance. If you're making a solution just runs in your office, on a server in your office, performance is less of a critical thing because you have a really fast network in your office. But if you're out going across the internet, even to Amazon, you need to think about the performance issues a little bit, especially if you start having 50, 80, 100 people in the solution. And so these values here are all cached, which means that they're pre-calculated. In the previous version of Starting Point, the totals that are on the invoices and estimates, these were all calculation fields that were calced in real time. It was fine a vast majority of the time, but every once in a while it would become a problem, especially in a list view or report. Now these are number fields. The calculations are made in a script. So if I go to, I'm going to show you this once, I'm going to go to script debugger. It's a script debugger. We're going to actually do a little script debugging, make it a little smaller. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change a value in here and, it's just going to confirm. I'm going to hit play on that. It's going to confirm that number's fine. Hello. See if it's going to let me change that. And I click out. Now what it does, it runs this script right here. So instead of a bunch of calculation fields that fire all the time, it's going to run this script once. So it doesn't matter. You can see what the totals are. It's updating subtotal price reporting, partial payment, subtotal net, profit, percentage, tax, all this sort of stuff. It runs about, we can see 27 lines, but there's a lot of blank space in there. So it's probably like 10 or 11, 12 real set fields that we run. And that runs those and it saves them in number fields here and it's cached, which means that it's instantly available. A number field can just be given to you by FileMaker server rapidly, instantly with almost no delay. A calculation has to go, it's a calc, think, process, and then give it to you. If you're doing one record, it's fast. It's very fast. But when you do 50,000 up here at the top, suddenly to get the list, it's going to have to do that one record thinking 50,000 times, which is not good. So we fixed that here in a number of places. So that's one area that we made performance improvements in. Once again, if you're going to do, like at RCC, we have been in business 27 years. I don't think we have more than 8 or 10,000 invoices in our system. So to have 50,000 invoices, you got to be a pretty busy company. And that's some internal sausage making at my company, but how many invoices do you really need? Now, if we go to contacts, we got a lot more records in here. If it goes there, hello. Oh, I got the script. Okay, I love it, little trick. So you're pressing a button and you can't figure out why nothing's happening. Then the script debugger is actually hidden on screen and it's waiting for you to approve what you're doing. So I'm just gonna close it and then hit it. Notice I have 126,000 records in here. There aren't a lot of calculations happening here, so the performance problems weren't in here so much, but they were in invoices and estimates. The other thing in Starting Point 5, we have 2 releases of Starting Point. All the starting points, the new 5s, have the ability for you to go and take a look at. So we're having a lot of fun here. I'm going to jump over to invoices. And what we've done is we started to put into product what we call side nuggets. Now, side nuggets is a very slang term. It's almost like a derogatory fast food term almost. And what we needed to do is we needed functionality we wanted to put in the product, but I didn't want to put it in the product. So here's layout mode. So what we did is we put these features on the side of the screen and Starting Point, and they are what we call side nuggets. Now, FileMaker or Apple in a million years would never have a product called side nuggets, but we needed an idea of features on the side that you can drag onto the screen if you want to add the feature. For example, I'm on contacts, but if I go to invoices And actually purchase is up here, and it's funny it's up there because that's really a side nugget. If you come over here, you'll see that we have certain side nuggets, certain features, certain capabilities that we built. We don't put them on the main screen because Starpoint partially is a training tool. It's a great tool. We use it for training. We use it for starting projects. And every time one of these guys behind me, or people, or the ladies that we have working for us, they come up with an idea and they say, hey, we should do this. And I have to think, well, is it useful for the training, and will it overwhelm people? So the pieces I think are useful but might overwhelm, we put on the side, and you have to know to go look for them. And they're what we call side nuggets. So if you want the feature, you drag it over. This one feature down here is kind of a nice one for 16. I'm going to mention this to you. So as you can tell at the bottom of the window in FileMaker, FileMaker got rid of the bottom bar down here. It's kind of a bummer. The bottom is gone. So the idea of zooming and zooming out and zooming in is kind of gone. The zooming has now been put in here. So you can use the keyboard shortcut to zoom, right? So we can zoom in and zoom out. And actually, I think there's the ability to jump to actual size if you're not on it. But they got rid of this bottom bar. And the other thing in Starpoint, and I got in an argument with the design guy, Nick, our design guy, and we went round and round and round, and I really liked the idea of having the last modified date and time on the bottom of the layout, right? So I said, I really like having, this last created modified time. We used to have it in the old Star Solutions, and everyone said, it's not professional enough. And so I said, let's get it back in here. So what we did is we made a side nugget. This is my side nugget. This is the boss side nugget. We also had help from some of the folks in the FileMaker community. And they helped out with coming up with some of the ideas here, but I'm going to drag this over here and just drop it in here. And then you could have it, slide up here. And what this does, it's a side nugget that we have, and it allows us to zoom in, obviously zoom out. It shows the percentage, which we're missing. Also, this one actually will also show us the last date and time it was modified by who, which is really useful. So you don't have to have it there, but these little side nuggets are in there. We're going to add other side nuggets for talking. We're going to go ahead and hook the Dropbox into one of these. We have a video on how to hook Dropbox in with a plugin from LiveCode. We're going to work on adding that as well. At any rate, the side nuggets are what we have cooking, and they are optional. And so when you get Starpoint, the nuggets will be basically on the side, and you can pull them over there. And that's also how we've integrated with Nick's photo tool. If you need advanced photo management handling, he's built pieces over here for you as well. In fact, there's a bunch of you who have already bought his product. So as you can see here, we're supporting it much more integrated in the product because of the variables in the external data source. So kind of wild. I mean, there's a lot in this. Product. And like I said, I started off the first couple weeks, I'm like, man, this is light. You start to play with it and you realize how much really cool, new, improved stuff is in here. It's great, it really is. So, questions from the team. We're kind of getting into the overtime. We're coming to the end here. We're gonna land the plane.
We got one person asked, like a lot of us, when a new release of something comes out, sometimes you wanna play it safe and wait for a subsequent release to come out before you fully roll it out for production. What are your thoughts? Is this ready to go now, or should they wait?
Well, I can answer it from the FileMaker perspective. FileMaker has been QAing and working on this pretty hard. I'm not seeing any gross bugs with it, but I totally endorse the idea of taking a slow approach to a rollout, especially if you have a big team. If it's you and 5 people, I mean, do you have any critical plugins? I mean, how crazy is your solution? If you're, doing email in and out and you're integrating with third-party services and Google Calendar and stuff, yeah, you might want to have one machine set up for testing for that. Otherwise, we've kind of jumped on board with it full speed. Other than getting used to the bottom not being there, which the biggest trick is, of course, is you're in a screen like this, and you go to layout mode, and then you want to be able to jump layouts, right? But there's no real way of getting to the layout control here. So you have to put a script in here that says show status toolbar, and then it shows it, and then we're back to browse mode, and then you can switch it. So little things to get used to like that, but largely it's pretty easy. Another area you're going to see a lot of is this little lockup here. I don't know if I really have to explain this to you too much, but basically it comes in 3 colors. It comes in green and orange and red. Red means there's no SSL certificate. It doesn't mean the file is open to the public. You have to use your username and password, but if the NSA or some sort of really high-end hacking kind of people were wanted to get into it, that could get listen to the transit traffic over the internet potentially. It would be a tremendous effort to do that, but technically it's not encrypted. If you're a medical database, a medical software, any sort of critical data, you don't want to get sucked into a lawsuit or something about, letting your data out. It's like Target, but 50 million people lost their credit cards, whatever, because Target did whatever. I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be Target. So you want to encrypt it. Now this is a test server, so I don't particularly care if the government wants to try to steal Starting Point. It's free already. The green light is what comes on when you open up a solution and it's got the proper encryption. It'll be locked in a little green icon. The orange icon is where it's an SSL certificate, but it really can't fully verify it. Something's a little funky with the SSL. Either the setup or it was the wrong one was bought or something goofy, minor issue. So the orange is probably secure, green is definitely secure, red is not secure, okay? So that's the tricks with that one. And so in terms of Starting Point, we're still fixing bugs. So 5.02 is out today. We'll probably have another release in a week. I would always recommend if you're gonna start a project, get the latest release of it. Starting Point is very popular, very, very popular. It's insanely popular. In fact, other consultants who will not be named have taken Starting Point and made little tweaks to it, and they're trying to sell it to you. I was laughing about that. Not in the United States that I'm aware of, but overseas I've seen that in the last week. I thought that was funny. So before you buy a big product, you might want to look at the free one first, because the the paid ones are getting, some of them are, I've heard this is twice now I've seen this happen. See people on the East Coast who took Starting Point, didn't change at all, selling it for $2,000 a copy. It's definitely worth that, but I didn't get a lick of money on that at all. I was like bummed. So they should share it with me. So if it's free though, so there you go, have fun with it. And we spent a lot of time in it. If you have questions about it, email us at support@RC Consulting. We'd be happy to answer questions. Once again, look for your download from FileMaker. Everyone who has our training bundle, and the training bundle has the copy of FileMaker Pro in it, so you get that as part of what we have. We've already sent all the people who are under subscription an update, so they already have 16. As you can see on the Mac, you can install both of them. In fact, technically, you can run both at the same time. I can technically run 15 over here at the same time. Of course, it wants me to install Java runtime because I have a 360 plugin installed. But yeah, you can run both at the same time. On Windows guys, you guys can, Windows, can you run two at the same time? Probably. 2 copies of FileMaker. I haven't tried it lately. I have to have one of my Windows people confirm that. But you can tell the difference, because on Mac, a FileMaker 15 window will look frequently, with the exception of the lock and a couple minor things, it looks a lot like a 16 and 15 look the same. Windows, it's it's really different, because you have that whole workspace in 15, and in 16 are separate. It's much better in 16. So feel free to talk to other people in the community. Check out the latest blogs. Check with your your plugin providers. Check with the folks at Productive. Check with 360works. Todd Geis, I'm sure, has got all sorts of blogs about REST API if you want to get into the real deep end of things. Check out the training. If you're interested in training, it's pretty expensive. Starts about $69 and goes up to about $200. And then if you're looking for a coach at a super amazingly discounted price, too low to advertise on the air, you can email us and we'll tell you what it is. But the coaches, hey, Christian, the people who do coaching, they love your coaching, right?
I've had very positive responses to the coaching program.
There we go. Good answer. Good answer. All right. So any questions, shoot us up. Miles, anything as we wrap things up?
Just one last thing about Starting Point. We had a couple of people ask when the UK specific version will be available.
Oh, yeah, I didn't mention that at all. So they're actively working on it. In fact, the guy over here to my left behind me who was drinking an adult beverage a second ago, him and another gentleman up in a Portland office we have up there are actually working on it together. And so I'm just going to say next week at this point. They think it'll be done in a couple days, but it's already Wednesday or Thursday or whatever it is. So yeah, it'll probably be Tuesday, Wednesday next week. You'll have the UK version. And the UK version, all we do is we change the currencies everywhere, and we adjust the size of the addresses to be more European friendly. And then the invoices, we reference VAT. So it's, in fact, look at that. There's a, There's a bug right there. Oh, is that this version? We'll have to check that. That's interesting. There's the, description. Oh, it runs into it right there. Okay, well, welcome to sliding in FileMaker, anchoring and sliding. Yeah, so it's value-added tax, and so you can decide, what the value-added tax level is, etc. Oh, one last thing in starting point for those of you who are still interested. We added multi-page invoices in the product by default, multi-page estimates by default. And lastly, if you go into preferences, invoices, you can actually select 3 different styles. There's a new style that we call basic, right? Is that the new one? Art, basic is the new style that you guys worked on? Yes. And so modern and minimalist, minimalist is the new one. So there's basic, modern, and a new style. So there's really 3 styles of invoices, and they can either be single page or multi-page with no limit. And so if you have questions, feel free to submit a bug to us. Hit the bug button here and submit a bug. That way we can get your bug fixed. And if it's a feature request, make sure you let us know, okay? All right, for everyone here at Richard Carl Consulting, we look forward to seeing your emails at support@RC Consulting. Feel free to check with FileMaker for the latest availability on updates to the product. Bug releases, they have a kind of a semi-normal schedule for V2, V3 releases, but we're using 16 V1 now. It seems to be working very, very well. And for my team here and everyone else, I thank you and have a great day.